What made you straight up nope out of a relationship? Story 1. Genuinely feared for my safety. I went over and we got into an argument, so I slept on the floor essentially. I went to the bathroom to text one of my buddies to come pick me up since I thought she had fallen asleep. Suddenly got a text from her saying, "Where are you?" and my phone made a sound. I froze up and opened the bathroom door and she was already standing there waiting for me in the darkness. She didn't say a word at all, just stared at me until I walked by. So I went back to my spot on the floor and got under the blanket and pretended to be going to sleep until she did. After about 30 minutes, I decided to peek out from under the covers and she was literally towering over me in total darkness with her eyes wide open the entire time. I got the F out of there so fast. Jesus Christ, it's like a sleep paralysis demon, but real. Story 2. I received a message that clearly wasn't meant for me. We just had our first date, which went really well, calling me cheap and a slime ball and how I'm on my last chance to make things right with her on her coming birthday with lots of presents. I replied, "Hi, this is X. We just met and had one date. Was that message for someone else?" She replied pretending to be her 12-year-old sister. Then apparently her dad messaged me about how he's told off his younger daughter. I'm out. F that. This one is hilarious. Should have said something like, "What kind of a father shares accounts of their discipline with a guy who dated their daughter once? I need to speak with your mother. Please put her on immediately." And then see how big you can make the cast of family members supporting her attempt to get another date and a nice birthday present. Story 3. Married for 6 years. Started out thinking she just struggled with depression and anxiety sometimes, but things kept escalating. I walked away when she started threatening to stab me in my sleep. We had already tried several couples therapists and individual therapists, but she refused to consider medication. I called her to meet up and try to find some closure, but she cut me off telling me I wasn't allowed to leave her and as punishment, she was sleeping with 2 other guys. At that point, I just ignored her number and filed for divorce. Hope she's doing well, but glad to not be afraid for my life. Story 4. We had been together for quite a while, 6 to 8 months, and lived together for at least 2 months when I decided to make tuna salad. I asked how he liked it. He told me. I came back with 2 bowls. Half the can made his way, and half the can made the way I liked it. He completely freaked out. He said, "If we can't agree on how to eat tuna, how will this ever work?" I said that we don't have to agree. We can both have it exactly the way we want and be happy. He vehemently disagreed. I started thinking of all his other controlling behavior and inability to compromise. It wasn't that day that we broke up, but it was definitely the day our relationship broke. The cheating didn't help either. Story 5. It was already on the rocks from roughly around the time the millionth drunken argument happened. However, the moment that sealed it was when she said something along the lines of, "If your dad wanted to be alive, he would still be here." My dad died in a car accident 3 years before that. Immediately went from loving her enough to make it work to thinking she was the most vilest person on earth. Story 6. My brother took a girl to a high-end sushi place and his date ordered 3 times the food as he did. He just got a grilled salmon. She ate almost none of it, and at the end, she said she ordered all of the extras so she could take some home for tomorrow. When the waiter showed up for the bill, she excused herself to go to the bathroom. The waiter asked my brother if he wanted to split the check, and at that point, my brother did the right thing and stuck her with $100 worth of sushi and booze. The girl returned to see a huge check at her seat. The true hero was the waiter. He probably sensed what had happened and came to the rescue. Story 7. We went to the mall and stopped by this little kiosk selling cookies. I decided that I would get 1 cookie. The lady working there said if I buy 2, I get 1 free. I decided to buy 2 and get the third one free. My date went off on this lady saying she was trying to scam me, etc, etc. He was legit yelling so loud that it was echoing through the mall. It was so embarrassing. If you're rude to people in customer service, you're not for me. Story 8. I was going through some stuff in my early 20s and was pretty desperate for any kind of affection, which is the only reason I took a couple of weeks to back out of this. The second time I ever met her, she told me to delete every girl's number from my phone, sister included. She then came over to my place, saw I had a full bookshelf, ridiculed me for being a reader, and in the same breath announced that she loved Coke so much and wanted me to try it. Finally, I escaped, but by then she was already sleeping with 2 of my friends, who are obviously no longer my friends. The good news is, I've now been happily married for 5 years and consider myself so incredibly lucky. She ridiculed you for reading and then tried to get you to try Coke in the same convo? This sounds like a really cheesy PSA. Ditch the book, Square. Here, try the super cool nose candy instead. Hilarious. Glad you didn't cave. Story 9. He didn't have a car, so I'd help him with rides to work. He worked the third shift at Toys R Us stocking shelves. I picked him up one night and he was so drunk he could barely stand. I made some comments about how he isn't going to be able to work. He started throwing shiz at me in the parking lot. I threw his shiz on the ground and left him there. I've dealt with one too many alcoholics and I wasn't wasting any more of my time. Cut to 5 years later, he is now sober and getting married this year. So good for him. Story 10. Showed up late at my place one night because she couldn't sleep at her place alone. I was fine with that until she started talking about the reason why. When she was alone, the demons in the corners and edges of the room would fill the dark spots and watch with their glowing eyes. Urged her continuously to get help, to go to the doctor, but she wouldn't do it. What she was seeing was real. I felt terrible leaving her for that, but I wasn't equipped to deal with someone who needed professional help and refused it. Story 11. I'm a black person. My best buddy in the whole wide world is a white person. We were roomies at one point. He brought a date over. I met her, nothing weird, but as it turned out, she had a problem with my bromeo living with a black person, me. He immediately broke it off with her. I don't have many friends, but I like to think I got quality over quantity. It is sincerely heartwarming to see so many enjoy an anecdote of bromance triumphing over bigotry. This post just may be the leverage I need to convince my BFF to join Reddit. Thank you, everyone. Story 12. We weren't in a relationship, but I had a developing thing with a guy once, until one day when I wasn't around, he and some other friends of ours went to a bar and he sneakily slipped stronger alcohol into some of the other girls' drinks there. This girl apparently was talking a lot with one of our other friends and not showing much attention to him. So he got jealous and threw this friend on the floor and started to strangle him. He was obviously thrown out of the bar after that and later tried to play it off as just a joke and just messing around. How do you jokingly try to strangle someone anyway? Anyway, I dropped this guy out of my life after I found out. I definitely wouldn't want to be stuck with someone like that. Story 13. I had a huge crush on her for a while, but never had the opportunity to talk to her given our weird work schedules. Then a friend from work set us up. I was elated. The first date goes really well and we hit it off. We start spending as much time as we can around each other, talking on the phone every night, all the special things you do when you're starting a new relationship. Then she starts coming over more often unannounced. She would stay for a couple of nights, then a week, then 2 weeks. I would come home from work and she would be in my house, sometimes drunk. The thing was, she had almost been fired for an incident involving alcohol before and was lying to them about her sobriety. She would have few too many, then go off about her family or how I wasn't taking our 2-month relationship seriously enough. The final straw dropped on Valentine's Day this year. She gets annihilated to the point of not being able to walk on her own. After I refuse her drunk advances, she flips out. What followed was a couple of hours of her threatening to drive home drunk, sitting outside so the cold weather would freeze her to death, laying in my bed and wailing my name till hoarse, and alternating between manic laughter and crying. 2 days later, once she was sobered up, I told her to kick rocks. We dated for just around 3 months. Quickest turnaround ever for me in a relationship. Story 14. He wanted me to spend time only with him or my family. He checked my phone and wanted me to only have 5 chats. My mom, my dad, my sibling, and him. I could not talk, say hi, or hug my male friends, and eventually I was not allowed to have them. I wasn't allowed to meet my girlfriends either. At some point, he took my phone and unfollowed every male on my Instagram. He used to come to my place and stay there with me to avoid going out. I dreamt about traveling to Japan, but he said no because at that time, I really liked one Japanese actor, and he was afraid I could meet him and fall for him. Toxic AF. I had the balls to break up only after 2 years of a relationship. He stalked me a couple of weeks after. Now I value myself more and would never let someone do something like this. Story 15. He went to England and came home with jewelry after our second date. Said he also bought engagement rings, but threw those in the ocean. What? When I said I couldn't accept the gifts, he had a big breakdown on the couch, crying hysterically. I walked out of the apartment, made sure he didn't follow me, and then I ran all the way to the bus. He had been acting a bit strange a couple of times before, too. A few months later, I found this guy had been grooming young girls online for a while and ended up being prosecuted for around 50 cases of This happened 20 years ago in Sweden. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison for 56 cases. Story 16. Not like you're not pretty, but you would be so much more attractive if you look like insert my baby sister's name. To which I said, you mean my 15 years younger and a minor, 6 foot, blonde, and size 2? He said it in front of his friends, and everything went dead silent. His best friend punched his arm and told him he was being a duck. I got up and walked out. His sister called later to apologize for him for being an a-hole and told me his entire family was pissed at him. Worst part? He genuinely didn't think he did anything wrong. The frontal lobe went on full shutdown. Story 17. Was seeing this guy for a couple weeks, but hadn't met his 2 young kids yet because that was his choice. He tells me that he's fighting for his kids. The mom took them in a breakup, but doesn't really want them. Is living with his parents and doesn't have to do anything if she has the kids. So one night I'm over and he tells me the following. If we were to get serious, I'd move into his apartment. I'd take care of his kids and clean his apartment while he's at work, and he'd expect dinner to be ready when he gets home from work. He told me to think about it for a few days. He said if I couldn't do this, that we could be F-buddies until he met someone else, then he would straight up cut me off. Why was he doing this? Because his kids need a mom and need stability. I hadn't even met his kids. I ended up telling him no, and I'm glad I did. Story 18. Was dating a guy for about a week in high school. I went on a class field trip for one of my classes and we were going to be gone all day. The guy I was dating would always walk me to my classes, and so I told him a few days prior that I wasn't going to be at school the day of the field trip. Well, my field trip ends up ending early, and I managed to make it to my last class of the day. The guy I was dating was waiting outside of my classroom. He saw me and started crying because he thought I was avoiding or hiding from him all day. I reminded him about the field trip I'd been mentioning for the past few days, and he refused to believe me because I was there for my last class. So yeah, we talked it out for a bit, and I had a very awkward and drawn out breakup with him after class that then drew into the following Monday. Story 19. I kept having to call the cops to calm down my wife after she became addicted to a slew of prescription drugs. I told her doctors that opiates for a ruptured vertebrae, stimulants for ADHD, Ambien most nights to help her sleep, and an assortment of other anxiety and depression and more to combat side effects made her violent. One of the times that I called the cops to calm the situation down during a bad episode just made me cry. All she had to say was that she had already been there and asked when it would stop. I thought I'd been holding things together reasonably well. I had an office job where no one knew what was up, though my work had suffered greatly. I kept clothes and food in my trunk just in case I had to stay out for a bit because she had decided I was part of the conspiracy. I had a gym on the way to work where I would shower and just have some downtime. I did all of our housework and errands because she couldn't work or do much of anything most of the time. Each time she cut herself, she told the hospital it was an accident, and she always tried to go to a different one. We lived in a major metro between hospitals. The cops saw through it. Being seen like that and knowing that even that lifestyle was running out hurt. I'm now recovering from the divorce and enjoying the calm. I sometimes panic for no reason, and I feel more comfortable with clothes and food stashed in the trunk, but I feel much healthier. I get more sleep. My blood pressure is normalized, for the most part. I don't cry at work anymore. Story 20. Wouldn't call it a relationship as it was only 3 dates, but I met this girl at a wedding. She was a friend of a friend and we shared numbers that night. Texted for a while, then had a date. The first date was probably a big red flag, but I shrugged it off. We had connected on Facebook and she noticed she went to college with a girl I went to high school with. No big deal, until I found out she had been messaging that girl and asking her all these questions about me in high school. Who did I date? What car I drove, etc. Anyway, the third date rolls around. I wasn't sure how long we would be together, so typically I wouldn't have taken her to a really nice restaurant so early in a relationship, but I was in the mood for steak, so I took her to a pretty high-end steakhouse. I've never been more embarrassed by someone's behavior in public in my life, and I have a 6- and 3-year-old at home now. She sent 3 martinis back because they weren't made correctly, while being extremely insulting and rude about it. She ordered a medium steak and then got pissed because she insisted she ordered medium rare. Both the waiter and I told her she had ordered medium. She was making comments about what other women in the restaurant were wearing, and not very subtly. Then, despite me trying to get out of there without buying her dessert, she got a dessert menu and expected them to make her something that they didn't have on the menu. They had cheesecake and she wanted chocolate cheesecake. Another outburst at the staff. On the way out the door, she made a point to stop and complain to everyone loud enough other customers could hear. When we got into my car, I was so embarrassed I pretended I had left my credit card on the table so I can go back in. I gave the waiter an extra 20 and apologized, telling him I was dumping her as soon as I got to her place. He laughed and told me he wished he could see it. I didn't really give her a chance to say much. She called me a loser and stormed off. Haven't seen or heard from her since. Story 21. Met a girl on Tinder. We went for a coffee date. Shared some of the same music tastes. She lets me know that one of them is playing at a local club on Friday. I suggest we go together and have dinner before. Friday comes, we do a late sushi dinner and head to this club around 10 for the show. Headliner, who we wanted to see, went on around midnight. Finally get to the bar and order drinks, then head to the dance floor. She pounds the drink and says she is getting another drink. She comes back a few minutes later with a new drink, gives me a kiss on the cheek, and wanders off on the dance floor. I am not someone who's overly possessive, and figure my wanting to be in the back to get a full visual and auditory experience is not her jam. All good. 20 minutes later, I see her grinding on some dude. Now mentally, I am already back in my car, but I want to see what happens when she makes eye contact with me. They start making out, and the guy notices me eyeballing them. She wanders off to get another drink, and he comes up to me asking if I have a problem. I explain the situation, and he says something to the extent of, "Sucks bro, she is with me now. F off." Took his advice and did. Called up a friend and went to his house and played Cat-10 till 2-ish. Then my phone rings. It's 2:30 a.m. and she is calling me asking where I went. My car was missing from the parking lot. I told her I went home and she was on her own to find a ride. "I bet that guy you were making out with could give you a ride." To which she responded, "Which one?" We kissed once, made out 0 times. I laughed, hung up, and rolled for more bricks.